It was a typical evening at our suburban home, just my dad and me. I was 12, slumped on his bed, chatting about nothing in particular. Mom was in her walk-in closet, the door slightly ajar, illuminated by the dim light filtering from the bedroom. I could clearly make out her silhouette, the familiar outline of her hair in a bun. Her arms moving in that rhythmic motion as she folded laundry. It was such a mundane, peaceful scene, which only made what happened next so much more horrifying. Dad mumbled something towards the closet, probably a question about dinner or where something was. No reply. He repeated himself, a little louder this time, assuming she hadn't heard him over the rustle of fabric. Still, silence. His patience started to thin. I could see the annoyance creep into his expression. He raised his voice again, calling out to her, a hint of frustration in his tone. My own stomach tightened. Why wasn't she answering? It wasn't like Mom to ignore him. It's a prickle of unease. A strange, childish curiosity nudged me. I slid off the bed, walked towards the half-open closet door, and stepped inside. I was just going to tease her, and maybe ask why she was ignoring Dad. But as I crossed that threshold, something shifted, and my world tilted violently. From behind me, from the very bedroom I had just exited, I heard my mother's voice, clear as day, laced with bewilderment. Why are you yelling my name? I froze, an icy, paralyzing dread seeping into my bones. My blood ran cold. I turned, slowly, disbelievingly. There, standing in the bedroom doorway, was my actual mother. She was wrapped in a towel, having just emerged from the bathroom, her face etched with genuine confusion. My gaze, wide with unspeakable terror, darted back to the closet where, moments before, a figure strikingly identical to her had been standing, folding clothes. But now, the closet was utterly, terrifyingly empty. The space where she had been was nothing but hangers and empty shelves. The silence that followed was deafening, a vacuum where normalcy had once resided. Dad, who had heard Mom's voice from the bedroom, now stared at me, then at the empty closet, a profound, gut-wrenching realization dawning upon him. We both knew. Whatever we had seen, whatever familiar form had occupied that space in the closet, it was not her. It bore her shape, her distinct hair bun, even mimicked her domestic actions with uncanny precision. But it was an imposter, an unknown malevolent entity that had somehow inserted itself into our mundane evening, observed us, and then vanished as silently as it had appeared. The shared experience left us both deeply unsettled, forever changing our perception of the world. The casual comfort of our home had been violated by an unseen, intelligent presence, a doppelganger of dread that had merely chosen to observe before receding back into the shadows from which it emerged. It was a stark, chilling reminder that sometimes the most terrifying entities are those that wear faces we know, making the familiar suddenly monstrous.
I often seek isolation as a balm for my soul, a refuge from the clamor of modern life. But deep in the wilderness, isolation can also become a terrifying cage, where the familiar comforts of civilization melt away, leaving you utterly exposed to things that thrive beyond the reach of streetlights and cell service. My next story unfolds in such a place, a remote valley where I sought solitude in nature, only to find myself the unnerving subject of an inexplicable, silent vigil. I had chosen a spot deep within a valley, miles from any signal or sign of human habitation. As dusk began to paint the sky, casting long, eerie shadows, I ran into a local, a seemingly friendly guy who offered advice on a hidden, camouflaged camping spot near a road and a river. Accepting his gesture, I settled in, building a crackling fire, enjoying a cold beer, and filling the quiet with the familiar voices of a comedy podcast. I was loud, visible, and utterly unworried, completely comfortable in my perceived solitude. As darkness fully enveloped the valley, I decided against setting up my tent, opting instead to sleep in the back of my truck under its topper, surrounded by my gear. The night passed, undisturbed, or so I thought. The next morning, the ritual of the wilderness began again. I struck a new fire, cracked open a fresh beer, and started breakfast. It was then, as the morning mist still clung to the valley floor, that I noticed it. At the very edge of my camp, a figure stood. A man. He was perfectly still, seemingly observing me, yet utterly silent. As an experienced outdoorsman, I immediately felt a cold wave of profound unease wash over me. This was not a fellow hiker passing by, nor a curious local. There was something profoundly wrong about the man's stillness, his unwavering, unblinking gaze fixed directly on my camp. I tried to engage him, a simple, "Good morning," then a slightly louder, "Can I help you?" The man remained motionless, unresponsive, a dark silhouette against the burgeoning light of dawn. His silence was not merely unnerving. It was a profound, almost aggressive, lack of acknowledgement. My heart began to pound against my ribs. I instinctively reached for my bear spray and my buck knife, placing them within immediate reach. The man was still there, a silent sentinel, a predatory presence. The feeling of being watched intensified, transforming the peaceful solitude into a suffocating dread. This wasn't a natural encounter. This was something else entirely. Driven by a primal urge to assert dominance or simply to break the agonizing silence, I issued an ultimatum, my voice trembling slightly despite my efforts to project authority. "Motherfucker, you are either going to acknowledge me or leave immediately." The figure remained unresponsive, unblinking. It was then, in a surge of terrified adrenaline, that I grabbed my bear mace and took a few steps forward, ready to defend my camp, ready to defend myself. And just as I moved, the man finally reacted. He didn't run, he didn't speak, he simply sulked away, a slow, deliberate retreat into the deepening shadows of the forest. The word sulked conveyed an almost childlike, petulant quality, yet it was laced with something far more sinister. I didn't waste another second. I threw my gear into my truck and fled the valley, the image of that silent, unmoving figure forever burned into my memory. The wilderness, once a place of refuge, had revealed its true, terrifying face to me. A place where some things watch, silently, and only retreat when directly confronted, leaving behind a profound, chilling question. What exactly was watching me and why?
I always took for granted the comfort of my own home, especially during the quiet hours of night. I assumed a level of safety, a shield against the unsettling chaos of the outside world. But what happens when that shield falters? When something from beyond the ordinary slips into the familiar, leaving a chilling imprint that defies rational explanation? My story delves into such an unsettling intrusion, a brief yet terrifying encounter that left me questioning the very nature of reality. It was late. The house hushed in the quiet of the night. I was lying in my bedroom, the dim glow of a screen casting a soft light across the room. My older brother was asleep in the room across the small hallway, and the living room was directly opposite his. A typical setup, a mundane domestic scene. Then it appeared, a faint red light glowing steadily in the hallway just outside my door. At first, my thought was simple, dismissible. Just the headlights of a car passing by outside. But as the seconds ticked by, a chilling realization solidified. Headlights were yellow or white, never this deep, unsettling red, and the light wasn't moving, wasn't fading. It was static, unwavering, pulsing softly in the oppressive darkness of the hallway. A knot of confusion, quickly followed by a cold dread, began to tighten in the pit of my stomach. Driven by an overwhelming need to understand, to rationalize this impossible sight, I slowly, cautiously slipped out of bed. The floorboards creaked faintly beneath my feet, each sound echoing in the profound silence of the house. I crept towards my bedroom door, my heart hammering against my ribs, and peered cautiously into the darkened hallway. What I saw next would forever be etched into my memory. A vision that defied all logic and shattered my sense of security. Standing in the hallway, less than 10 feet from my doorway, was an old woman. She held a small red candle in her hand, its flame casting the unsettling glow. But it wasn't just her presence that was terrifying. It was her face. Her features were eerily, disturbingly familiar, resembling someone I had seen just that day in a top 15 scary videos compilation online. The image was too precise, too unsettlingly accurate to be a coincidence. My blood ran cold. This was no ordinary intruder. This was something that should not exist outside the flickering pixels of a screen, something that had inexplicably crossed into my reality. Panic seized me. With a choked gasp, I recoiled, scrambling back into the perceived safety of my bed. I pulled the covers tightly over my head, eyes wide with terror, fixed on the door, dreading what might appear. Every shadow seemed to writhe, every creak of the house now a potential footstep, a silent advance. Time stretched, an agonizing eternity. I lay there, frozen, afraid to move, afraid to breathe, waiting for the inevitable. The suffocating fear eventually propelled me to seek refuge, to find a sliver of comfort in shared space. Slowly, cautiously, I slipped out of bed once more, compelled by the desperate need to reach my older brother's room. I peeked my head out into the hallway again, trembling. The old woman was no longer in the hallway. She was now in the living room, a silent, unmoving sentinel, her red candle still casting its eerie glow towards the front window. With a renewed surge of pure, primal terror, I quietly and quickly darted across the hall, knocking frantically on my brother's door, desperate for the safety of his presence, for a return to a reality where old women from YouTube videos didn't materialize in hallways with red candles. The encounter lasted only moments, but the image of the red candle woman, a spectral visitor from the digital realm, burned an indelible mark, a chilling reminder that sometimes the most terrifying threats are those that defy all explanation, stepping directly out of our nightmares and into our very homes.
Darkness doesn't always hide. Sometimes it invites you in. What if the shadows watch back? 3 chilling encounters from the safety of home. Or so we thought. If this video left you questioning everything, show your support with a like and drop a comment with your theory. Subscribe to the Diabolists Lab on YouTube and TikTok, and if our work speaks to you, consider fueling the fire through the Ko-fi link in the description. And remember, keep your eyes open and your doors locked. Evil waits for those who open the wrong one.